Mike Pompeo just went out there. Now, Mike Pompeo, he's a lunatic. I mean, the guy's a lunatic.
Wait, on
There
a
will
scale of
be,
Trump lunatics, can we set up a spectrum here? Like, how is he Sebastian Gorka lunatic?
I think he's like an 8, and then you got Bill Burr at 9, and then Gorka's like a 10 along with Trump,
Yeah.
would you
I,
say?
I think so. Let's
Bill
pull
Barr,
this
I mean,
clip.
not Bill Burr, the
Bill Burr,
comedian.
I was like,
Well,
I mean,
but Pompeo is also a lunatic, not just in like a conspiracy theory way, but also in a theocrat way. He does not get the credit that I think he deserves for being one of these fundamentalists who would impose a theocratic regime in this country if he could. I mean, Mike Pence has largely escaped. I mean, he's spoken about these ways, but I don't think people know the depth of his sort of theocratic impulses. And frankly, and I didn't say this on the other half of the show because, I didn't want to get anybody's, too uptight. But Mike Pence taking a vacation now, I'm sorry, that's very odd. That is very odd. But let's first talk about this Mike Pompeo thing. Here's Mike Pompeo. This guy, I mean, I would like to lock him up right now.
There will be a smooth transition to a second Trump administration. Right? We're ready. The world is watching what's taking place here. We're going to count all the votes. When the process is complete, there'll be electors selected. There's a process. The Constitution lays it out pretty clearly. The world should have every confidence that the transition necessary to make sure that the State Department is functional today, successful today, and successful with the president who's in office on January 20th, mid-afternoon, will also be successful. I went through a transition on the front, and I've been on the other side of this. I'm very confident that we will do all the things that are necessary to make sure that the government, the United States government, will continue to perform its national security function as we go forward.
Now, here's what I can't understand, okay? If these guys are just doing it for the sake of Trump's ego so that he can get ramped down, or maybe they're all doing it because they all perceive value politically going forward in having been the guy who will say the most ostentatious thing in support of Donald Trump at a time where he's clearly lost the election. I mean, there's two things, right? It's either that is the answer, so that Mike Pompeo is just like, this is going to set me up to run for, I don't know, senator from Kansas or wherever it is that, whatever he's going to do. Or they're thinking it's going to set me up to run, and maybe the Pennsylvania legislature decides that they're going to just choose their own electors, and it goes to the Supreme Court, and I say, okay. I mean, like, at what
it's
point,
a win-win. It's a win-win, right?
Well, yes, but what point do we start getting a little worried as opposed to like, look at these lunatics?
No, that was incredibly worrisome. That was incredibly worrisome. I mean, they're saying that they want election integrity and the recount, and then, we'll see what happens. But you're already declaring, there will be a smooth transition to a second Trump administration. I mean, politically for these Republicans, they never get held accountable. We saw Lindsey Graham say, you can call me a hypocrite if I do X, Y, and Z. Then he did X, Y, and Z when it came to Amy Coney Barrett. He cruised to re-election, even though his campaign...
He was hugged by Dianne Feinstein.
Exactly. The Democrats don't hold him accountable, but certainly Republican voters don't hold Republicans accountable, except recently, because there's this schism between the cultural identity of Trump supporters and the establishment wing of the Republican Party. But I think that's even overplayed because they're all going to walk in lockstep, as we're seeing here. Like, you need to be on the right emotional side of Trump supporters if you want a future in the current Republican Party. And that's the calculation that we're seeing. And if they're wrong, no one's going to hold them accountable. So why not just pretend like Trump won the election?
I think this is more, I don't know if it's to win over Trump voters who change their mind every day. As you said, like they flip their perspective as it is about the Senate. I think that, once McConnell made this about the Senate, I think he's bartering with Mitch McConnell. I don't think he's bartering with Trump voters. I think he's like, all right, this is what the team's doing. We're doing it this way. but then with Lindsey Graham, I think another side of this that we have to keep in mind is Lindsey Graham ran a Republican machine in his state. And if you run a Republican machine in your state, which strangely enough, not a lot of states do, then you're able to do whatever you want. And that's the problem with the Democrats, of course, is that they don't run a machine anywhere. And so they, can't do whatever they want. Cuomo does whatever he wants. He gets away with it. He wins landslide elections because he runs a machine. So, as I keep hitting my microphone. So I think I don't think this has anything to do with Trump. I don't even think it has to do with Trump voters. I think it has to do with, as Sam said, his future and really just going lockstep with Mitch McConnell.
That Pompeo's going lockstep with Mitch McConnell.
Yes.
What's the value of Pompeo doing it with McConnell? Just a future.
I mean, if this is about a future for him, I mean, this isn't like when Nixon's men started to abandon him, because these are folks who want a political future. And if we didn't have a Senate race, 2 Senate races in Georgia, then maybe they would be distancing themselves from Trump. But I don't know. I mean,
why would they distance themselves from Trump? I mean, why wouldn't the incentive still be there? I mean, in other words, it is personally, if you are a Republican, you need to be seen as being pro-Trump.
He gained support in the Republican. He gained support in the Republican Party. I mean, I think he still has the heart of Republican voters and will for a very long time. I don't see, I watched SNL and they talked about, we'll never have to hear from him again, or we don't have to hear from him again, was the joke, right? On that Colin Joe said. And I'm like, actually, we do have to listen to him.
Got some bad news.
He's
starting a pack. He's starting a pack that ostensibly is to keep his hold over the GOP. I mean, what that sounds like to me is really just sort of like, it's just another way to cipher money out, but he's going to go around and he's going to do what Sarah Palin did for at least a couple of years. And he's even better at it than she was.
Way better. It's a whole grift. It's unbelievable. These emails that the Trump campaign is sending out to their supporters, help us with the legal battle. Can you chip in here? Can you chip in there? I mean, and then in fine print beneath it, you see 60% of this money goes to paying off the debts from the election.
Yeah, exactly.
So, I mean this is the grift is going to continue, and he's good at it. He's good at
Trump
grifting.
He goes out on the road for 2 years. He can offload the responsibility for a meth addiction to his kids. And so he doesn't have to deal with that.
Right. I'm going to stand by this. I don't think it has anything to do with Trump. I think this has to do with, there's an election in January and they need to keep that excitement and they need to keep the coalition together for that election. They need to keep the money flowing for that election, and they're going to do whatever it takes. And if there weren't an election, I think they would distance themselves, as they were last week, basically. And then just move on, because Republican minds have short memories. They just do whatever the moment says, whatever's opportunistic at that moment, they will do.